Rats are very unique animals that have often been associated with street gutters or dirty streets of New York City. However, this very beautiful and intelligent animal is very industrious with a very unique type of anatomical structure with such dexterity that they can almost fit into any opening that they can get their head through. These creatures are also really versatile and can be utilized in so many different artworks, making them a really great subject matter for a drawing exercise. It also provides us with a unique challenge to represent features such as fur, which can be utilized in other furry animals. There's a lot to be gained from a rat drawing, so with that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another unique tutorial by artincontext.org where we explore various art related topics. And in today's video, we will be exploring how to draw a realistic rat with a few simple steps. So with that being said, we can get into it. So with this specific drawing, we will be working with the layering process, working with colors and ultimately refining them with some detail. So we want to work with materials that are really conducive to that kind of drawing process or painting process. Again, you can follow these steps with whatever materials you have available to you, but the way in which we're going to start is by shaping the rat. Now, naturally, we can start by shaping the rat in its basic features. Very simplistically, we can start by drawing the head in a very spear-headed shape. The body of the rat is often pear-shaped as well, kind of connecting to the spear-headed shape of the rat. So we just want to make sure that we start by forming the rat in these two main components, with the spear-headed shape for the head and naturally the actual pear shape for the body. So consider looking at a reference image of a rat as well to assist you in your drawing process, as this will just basically help you to kind of really represent these proportions as accurately as possible. We can also draw in the legs and arms which extend from below the rat's body. So keep your sketch quite loose at this point, just trying to capture the general shape of these various features. We can then lightly erase our rat drawing, leaving behind some ghost lines to assist us in the refining of the structure of these various features before we proceed to refining these features. Now, once we have lightly erased these features, we can then move on to refining the features of the rat. And this is where we start working again from the head, slowly working our way through the body. So we can now start working in these very fine details such as the nose, mouth, eyes, ears, and head structure or the general outline. Again, we are still trying to keep our sketch quite light and loose for now, aiming to capture the general placement and proportions of these various features. As we work our way down towards the front feet, we can then draw the legs covered in fur, but we do want to have these moments where we see the exposed hand-like front feet. So the limbs are generally covered in fur with these exposed limbs or kind of extremities such as the hands and feet, or otherwise just known as feet. The hind feet are also generally larger slightly than the front feet, so where the front feet function more kind of like hands to grab items, climb and open objects, the hind feet will function slightly more like actual feet, because this kind of helps the rat to stabilize itself and keep itself grounded as it kind of rests or sits as it opens objects with its hands. The lower body is also slightly rounded, once again similar to that pear fruit shape. So take your time working through the shape and refining the rat sketch. Again, keep your line work quite loose for now, allowing for the line work to represent a little bit more of a disheveled quality in the fur coat. So this is where we can have a little bit more of scattered line work, again just to represent or start to represent these qualities of fur-like texture. As we make our way through to the tail of the rat, we can make it fairly long and pointed towards the end of the tail. This is kind of a very unique feature of a rat that distinguishes it from mouses. So the long scaly tail is an identifying feature of the rat, so it is essential for the rat drawing. Now we're going to move on to adding in some color to the rat drawing, and this is where we start to build up our tonal variations with lighter hues of various colors that we choose to use. In this case, we'll work with kind of blues and kind of darker grays shifting into blacks. So we can now start adding some layers of color to the rat drawing. In this case, let us work with a dark color like a grayish blue. The intention is to start with light layering of color once again, and this way we have more agency and control over our coloring process. Now you want to keep your colors fairly light, once again establishing a base layer within the outline of your rat sketch, and this way we have more control over how dark or light some areas of our rat drawing should be, especially if we are using traditional materials. So you can keep your mark making quite scattered and scribble-like. Again, this will develop a little bit more of a rough undertone that will enhance the fur-like textural qualities within your rat drawing. We also want to create subtle tonal distinctions by making some areas slightly darker than others, and this is where we start to think about the anatomical structure or the bone structure in terms of how limbs protrude from beneath the surface area of the skin, naturally causing some areas to protrude and therefore cast shadows on the fur coat of the rat. We also want to be conscious of the lighter underbelly of the rat, which is often contrasted with the fur coat that is slightly darker. In this case, we are working with a grayish blue. So we do want to just think about a more naturalistic fur coat covering in terms of how it covers the sides and back of the rat, but leaves a slightly more exposed or has a lighter coloration within the belly, not necessarily exposed in terms of skin, but just lighter in color in terms of the fur coat. So we can also start adding some light pink color to the exposed areas of the rat, such as the nose, the feet, basically the extremities, such as the inner ears, the feet, the nose. The tail is often darker in color, so we can give it a slightly gray color at this point. But now we can start refining the rat further. So now that we have the shape and base colors of the rat established, we can proceed by sketching in some details. So working our way from the head, we can start to shape certain features such as the eyes and ears, working a little bit more strategically with line work and shading to represent these very unique details, color variations, and textural qualities. So this is where we start to really utilize line work to emphasize the textural qualities of fur throughout the body of the rat. And this is where we want to build up our layers of actual little strokes that kind of move throughout the entire structure or body of the rat, where we slowly build up our layers once again of lighter tonal values to darker tonal values. In this case, we are working with these blues, these dark grayish blues. So naturally, we also want to just bear in mind the actual textural quality of the fur and how we represent that. And the best way to do so is with some line work, really integrating these small strokes of lines. But as we add in some line work throughout the body of the rat, we can start to think about how these lines basically shape the different features as well as we proceed. Now we want to think about how darker lines can be used to shape features and bring dimension. And naturally, again, this is where we think about protruding qualities and have a sense of the anatomical bone-like structure beneath the surface area of the skin within the rat drawing. This means we also want to be conscious of lighter areas in the body as well, in terms of how we represent these protruding areas that are exposed to a light source. So this is particularly true for the legs and how they extend outwardly from the body. So we really just want to make sure we are taking our time integrating these lines, building them up through lighter to darker tonal variations, and slowly thinking about which areas would be more exposed to a light source. In this case, it's generally true for legs as they extend outwardly from the body. We can also make the line work much smaller in strokes around the facial features, naturally creating a more dense close head quality within the face. We can also make the eyes of the rat black at this point, but naturally as we do so, we want to be conscious of the textural difference between the eye and fur. So we do want to represent the eyes slightly different with subtle highlights to emphasize the glassy surface area or the moist quality within the eye of the rat. But otherwise, guys, try to take your time with adding in these details and lines, slowly working your way through the entire body. Naturally, the color of your detailing will change depending on the areas that you work on, but we do want to think about the spectrum of the color that we choose in terms of how we represent the shadowed qualities of that color. In this case, with this blue-gray, it will go slightly darker to a more black undertone in the gray, but in the highlighted areas, it will slightly go lighter to a slightly more light blue quality. Now this means we do want to work with these lighter grays or these lighter blues, and in this case we can also integrate white highlights or white strokes near the underbelly, making sure it aligns with the color values of the fur coat. The intention is to just simply think about using line work and being patient as you slowly integrate it into your rat drawing to create texture and emphasize the form of the rat. So we do simply just want to take our time, be patient, build up these lines, going through the entire structure of the body, thinking about areas that are exposed to the light source and areas that are shadowed. This means we can use a spectrum once again within the color that you have chosen, in this case blues and grays, in the fur coat to play around with the shaping of the rat and how these color differences in tonal value emphasize different shapes within the body. But lastly, we're going to move on to adding in the final details. Once you have established most of the line work into the body of the rat, we can then start working with some subtle highlights and details to bring more shape to the different features. You can also start to add some more color to the tail. Keeping it gray and brown is generally a little bit more aesthetically accurate in terms of how we represent a rat's tail. We can also start bringing more shape to the feet, and as we do so, we can again build up these color variations depending on the spectrum that we choose. With rat feet or the extremities that tend to be slightly more orangey pink in terms of color, so we do want to think about how we integrate those as a base color, work in these lighter tonal variations of those colors, and slowly bring more shape to the different joints, and general shape of the digits by darkening those particular colors. So that's where we can shift into reds, maybe even browns, and slowly building up these tonal variations to bring more shape into the extremities, specifically the feet. We want to also work in these subtle lighter highlights between the lighter and darker areas of the fur coat. So this is where we'll start to kind of integrate actual white highlights, and this will create somewhat a more seamless integration between these different colors on the fur, as well as bring more shape to the underbelly. So this is where we really want to create a subtle transition between the white underbelly and the darker fur coat along the side and back of the rat. But otherwise, guys, allow yourself to work in these highlights through the body of the rat, making sure not to overpower the features, but to rather enhance them with these details. These last details should be added quite strategically and very sparingly, really being careful with these highlights to bring slightly more shape and emphasis to the most exposed areas of the body. And this can be within the fur coat, this can be in the hands, the feet, and again, maybe the highlights to bring more shape to the eye. But most importantly, take your time, enjoy the process, and try not to rush. Some key things to take away: remember, start with a very generalized shape with basic structures of the main features. Then you can slowly start to refine the outline on these various features, making sure your drawing is proportionally correct. You can then start to integrate color, and then lastly add in these details to really enhance the drawing into a more realistic territory or representation of that animal. But that is it. If you did like this video or are interested in similar or related topics, please do let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear back from you guys, and you can show your support by liking and subscribing. That helps us to grow the channel, which enables us to make more art related content for you guys, which we love to do. But thanks again for tuning in. That is it from me today. Until next time, see you in the next video. Cheers.